Let's start now. Hey there, Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen, leading the movement for movement and bringing you another edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday training, where I take a concept, a practice, a strategy. What's the difference between a practice and a strategy? I don't know, but something that we use in autism fitness programming and bring it to you so that you can bring it to your autism and neurodivergent life skill athletes, whether you're in a home, in a clinic, in a school, in a residential facility, in a gym, wherever you are, developing outstanding and effective fitness and adapted PE programs for the autism and neurodivergent population. And of course, before I get started, please definitely subscribe and share this video with others for whom it might make a difference. So I am excited about this video because it is a subject that keeps coming up recently, so it is topical, at least in my world, probably in yours as well. So there is a subject that I'm covering, upregulation versus downregulation. So oftentimes you're probably familiar with the term behavior management, or the phrase, and I just like this one, oh, this individual is having behaviors, which, by the way, we're all having behaviors. I'm having a behavior right now. I'm speaking to my camera. Right? You're having a behavior right now. You're watching me speak to my camera, hoping that something informative is going to come out of my mouth. And it will. So the phrase is sometimes well-intentioned but misguided because we're always having behaviors. What professionals are referring to in this case is we're seeing aberrant or maladaptive behaviors for a variety of reasons. But usually these coincide with some type of want or need. So the individual finds a task or an activity aversive, or they are overstimulated, or they are anxious about a situation, they want to escape, or there's some other internal occurrence that is otherwise challenging or undesirable for that particular individual. Sometimes it is very simple and straightforward to figure out what's going on for that individual, and sometimes it takes a little bit more guesswork, and other times we never know why an aberrant behavior occurred. But we come back to the reasons why these behaviors are occurring. And the reason that I bring this up in this video related to fitness protocols is there's a very important intersection here, because so much of what we see is about managing behaviors, and we see or hear very little about being proactive or preventing a lot of these behaviors. So this has come up recently in the lives of several athletes, of my one-to-one athletes that I work with, because they are entering their teenage years, and thus we see some of these behaviors elevating. And so clearly there is a biochemical and a neurological reason for these behaviors occurring. And in some of these situations, the behaviors that come up that are, perfectly normal in the context of getting into the adolescent and teenage years are looked at as needing management. Now, surely in a situation in which an individual is having an outburst, or they're having a really difficult time, of course we want to support that athlete as much as possible. But here is the thing as well. When we hear about the topic of, or see videos about, or there's information on behavior management, it's always from the down-regulation side. Like, how do we get an athlete, an individual, see where I'm leading here, but how do we get an individual calmer? How do we get them more mindful? Which is fine. And then we go to the sensory room route, which is okay, but everything is about down-regulation. Everything is about calming. Let me offer something, right? And this is another situation in which fitness can play a pivotal role in the lives of our autism and neurodivergent individuals. I I mentioned athletes before, which was kind of a primer for this conversation, so stay with me. Instead of having to downregulate when an individual is escalating, and surely these situations arise, and I'm not saying this is going to eradicate the need for some type of behavioral support or intervention in these cases. However, we spend so much time talking and acting on downregulation when in reality, upregulation can have myriad benefits and oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes be a preventative or proactive measure for an individual getting upset or getting highly anxious or having an escalating behavior. Why? Well, let's talk about some of the benefits of fitness in general, not only physiological, but also emotional regulation and the cognitive benefit. We can talk about some of the serotonin release that happens and that catharsis, that after exercise calmness, but that's after exercise, which means that first we have to integrate or initiate and program exercise for our autism and neurodivergent individuals, whether we're in a school setting or a clinical setting or a home setting. Now, some of the challenges you might be thinking around this are, well, they don't like exercise, or we don't know how to program exercise for this individual. They might find it aversive, and then we're back in this cycle where they do not want to engage in this particular activity. However, if we introduce it step by step, if we're pairing it with reinforcement, and if we are respecting that individual as someone who is capable of attaining new skills, which they are, by the way, then we can introduce effective and meaningful fitness programming that will not only benefit that individual physiologically, but we can upregulate, meaning giving them something that is challenging, that may be a little bit strenuous, but ultimately can beneficially affect their mood over the course of the day. I'll give you a couple of examples of exercises that work really well. So many of our Autism Fitness Certified pros, when they have an athlete who comes in and is highly dysregulated, they have that athlete do sandbell slams. Sandbell is a great product. We endorse it in Autism Fitness. We use it all the time. It's a neoprene disc that is filled with sand. We have our athletes raise it over their head and slam it into the floor repeatedly, over and over and over. So here we have a vigorous, repeated physical activity, and after 8 or 10 repetitions of that, you can bet that the athlete is like, okay, now we have the downregulation, but only because we had, say it with me now, we had the upregulation. So where we need to focus more of our efforts is on the upregulation and increasing that sensory, not just input, but that sensory output for that athlete. Because sitting calmly is fine, but sitting calmly is almost the net result of doing a vigorous physical activity session. So when we have our athletes do sandbell slams, and then we have them do, second example, a heavy sandbag carry, and by heavy, anywhere between 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 pounds, yes, they can do it. 50-pound sandbag back and forth across the room, couple of sandbell slams, maybe some squats or overhead presses. And again, these are things that we can build up to. It doesn't all have to be in the first session, the very first time. But when we see an individual, especially in those adolescent and teenage years, be able to exert or express that energy, right, and get it out, then there's that calming effect. The calming effect is going to be less likely just from calming activities, but if we have a situation in which the athlete can now perform all of these different exercises for, it could be 5 or 10 or 15 or 25 minutes, and now there's that calm. Now we have good down regulation or decompression because the athlete has had sufficient energy output. So it's the energy output that is almost entirely missing for most programs, whether they are therapeutic or educational or recreational oftentimes, or whether we're talking about a residential facility, where is the upregulation in order for the athlete to be able to self-regulate? Because de-escalation is fine, needed sometimes, but where is the self-regulation? We're going to have better down-regulation into self-regulation when we have, again, that upregulation. So how do we get that upregulation? Through consistent, vigorous physical activity at a challenge level that is appropriate for that particular athlete. So even though many professionals and parents are seeking the calm, and I understand, in order to get the calm, we need to have that energy expenditure. And there is no better energy expenditure than physical exercise. And there is practically no better physical exercise than resistance-based training. So we include some power in that also. So we get in some medicine ball throws, some sandbell slams. We get in our squats, our presses, our band rows, our heavy carries. And not only are we having that wonderful self-regulatory effect and getting that energy out, but that physiological effect, which is the one that we usually talk about, of the athlete developing these physical skills that are then going to generalize or transfer over to activities of daily living. So tell me, viewer, where is the net negative of introducing exercise? Now, if we're going to introduce exercise, it's not just random, let's do jumping jacks, let's run back and forth across the room. We have to understand the role of different exercises. And of course, that's why we have autism fitness programming, because there needs to be a structured way, as with any scientific practice, as with any therapeutic practice, as with any structured activity. There needs to be a sequence and an understanding of the variables and practices so we can implement them according to the needs of each individual. But speaking more broadly or generally, when we implement those fundamental movement patterns, our medicine ball throws, our sandbell slams, our heavy carries, squats, presses, and pulls, these are the fundamental movement patterns that we do every day, hence the activities of daily living and those life skills. So from all three areas of skill, the physical, the adaptive, the cognitive, we are enhancing the athlete's capabilities. We're enhancing not only their potential, but the reality of them being able to function better in the world. And it is highly likely that we're going to have to do less de-escalation, because now we're not so much on the side of behavior management, but preempting a lot of the frustration and angst and some of these other things that are certainly pertinent in the world of neurodiversity. But what if we give our athletes a functional alternative in the form of exercise? Have it structured, have it scalable, and have it available to all individuals so that they can be safer, stronger, healthier, and are able to self-regulate better. Probably creates a better situation for everyone, don't you think? I do. Of course, here I'm kind of biased, being the founder of Autism Fitness, which reminds me, the Autism Fitness Certification is available to you wherever you are in the world. If you're ready to go pro and join the movement for movement, you can head on over to autismfitness.com. I would also love to know what you think about this video. Is it helpful? Did it make you think a little bit about the difference between downregulation and upregulation, and the fact that we need upregulation in that conversation also? There's a hint. But I would love to know what you think. If this has been helpful for you, leave that in the comments below. And if there's a topic you'd like me to cover in a future edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday Training, leave that in the comments below also. Love to read them. Helps the algorithm. I've been told to say that. Yes, been trained to say that. Anyway, I appreciate you watching. Again, I'm Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen, leading the movement for movement. Thank you very much for watching.